mother left her teenage children alone for years, thinking they would be fine. But when the police knocked on her door one rainy night, she realized her mistake had cost her everything. This is not just a story of neglect. It's a warning every parent needs to hear. The day Mr. Emeka was buried, the sky wept. Heavy rain poured over the small Nigerian town of Nkwo, as if the heavens themselves mourned the loss of a good man. The church was packed. Relatives, neighbours, even distant acquaintances came to pay their respects. But in the front pew, 3 figures sat in stunned silence. Mrs. Ada, her 19-year-old son Michael, and her 18-year-old daughter Joy. Their faces were blank, their hands limp in their laps. The casket gleamed under the dim church lights, a cruel reminder that the man who had held their family together was gone forever. Ada had always been the quieter one in the marriage, content to let Emeka take the lead. He was the one who checked the children's homework, who sat them down for life talks, who laughed loudly at the dinner table. Now, as the priest's words droned on, Ada felt the weight of her new reality pressing down on her. What do I do now? For the first few weeks after the funeral, Ada moved through the house like a ghost. She cooked meals without tasting them, spoke only in monosyllables, and spent hours locked in her room, staring at old photographs. Michael and Joy tried to keep things normal. Joy even took over the cooking, but the silence in the house was suffocating. One evening, Michael knocked on his mother's door. "Mama, we need to talk about school fees. The deadline is next week." Ada's voice was hollow. "I'll handle it." But she didn't. Days passed, then weeks. The reminders from Michael's university grew more urgent. Joy's final exams were approaching, but Ada hadn't even asked how her preparations were going. The siblings tiptoed around their mother, afraid to add to her burdens, but resentment simmered beneath the surface. Then, one morning, Ada announced at breakfast, "I'm going to Lagos." Michael frowned. "For how long?" 2 weeks. Maybe a month. I need to find better work." Joy's spoon clattered against her plate. "You're leaving us?" Ada wouldn't meet their eyes. "You're grown. You'll be fine." The first time Ada left, she returned after 3 months. Not 2 weeks. She came back with money, yes, but also a new distance in her eyes. She barely asked about their lives before announcing another trip. And so the cycle began. Ada's absences stretched longer. 6 months. A year. The money she sent was sporadic, sometimes barely enough for food, let alone school fees. Michael dropped out of university, too ashamed to tell his friends the truth. Joy, desperate for some semblance of care, started dating an older man, a trader who showered her with gifts and sweet words. Neighbours noticed, of course. Auntie Nkechi down the street saw Michael stumbling home drunk some nights. Uncle Chijioke heard whispers about Joy's questionable boyfriend, but in true Nigerian fashion they shook their heads and muttered, "Not my business." Then came the night that changed everything. Joy came home late, her face streaked with tears. She was pregnant. Her boyfriend, upon hearing the news, had laughed in her face. "You think I'm ready to be a father? Be serious." Michael, already drunk on cheap gin, exploded. "You're so stupid. How could you let this happen?" Joy screamed back. "Who was here to teach me better?" "You? Mama?" The argument turned vicious, words like knives slashing at old wounds. Then, in a moment of blind rage, Michael shoved her. Joy stumbled. Her head hit the sharp edge of the wooden table, a sickening crack. Silence. Then blood. So much blood. The rain was coming down in sheets the night Michael carried his sister's limp body through the hospital doors. Her blood soaked through his shirt, warm and sticky against his skin, mixing with the rainwater dripping from his hair. The nurses took one look at Joy's ashen face and sprang into action, wheeling her away on a stretcher while a doctor barked orders. Michael stood frozen in the hallway, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his hands trembling. "What have I done?" The smell of antiseptic burned his nose. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too harsh. He sank into a plastic chair, his mind replaying the scene over and over. The shove, the crack of Joy's head against the table, the way her eyes rolled back before she collapsed. He hadn't meant to hurt her. He hadn't. But the truth was undeniable. His anger had taken control, and now his sister might die because of it. A nurse approached him, her expression unreadable. "Are you the patient's guardian?" Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. Guardian? He was just her brother. Their mother hadn't been home in over a year. "We need to contact her parents," the nurse pressed. Something inside Michael snapped. "Our father is dead," he said, his voice hollow. "And our mother. She's not here." The nurse's frown deepened. "Where is she?" "I don't know." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The nurse exchanged a glance with a colleague, then walked away, her shoes squeaking against the linoleum. Michael knew what was coming next. He had seen enough Nigerian dramas to know how this worked. Once the authorities got involved, there was no going back. By morning, the hospital staff had called the police. A stern-faced officer sat across from Michael in a cramped office, flipping through a notepad. "So, let me get this straight," he said. "Your sister was injured in your home, and your mother hasn't been seen in months?" Michael nodded numbly. "And you've been living alone with her all this time?" "Yes." The officer's pen tapped against the paper. "Do you have any relatives nearby? Aunties? Uncles?" Michael shook his head. "They all live far away. Nobody checked on us." The officer sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is a serious matter, Michael. A young girl, pregnant, injured in her own home, and no parents around?" He leaned forward. "Do you understand how bad this looks?" Michael did, but it was too late now. Somehow, maybe through a nurse's gossip, maybe through a police leak, the story found its way to the press. By the next day, the headlines were everywhere. Teen girl hospitalized after years of parental neglect. Where was their mother? Community demands answers. Social media erupted. WhatsApp groups buzzed with outrage. Twitter dragged Ada's name through the mud. How could a mother abandon her children like that? Why didn't anyone notice? Then came the footage. A local news crew ambushed Ada the moment she stepped off a bus from Lagos, her face drawn with exhaustion. The reporter shoved a microphone in her face. "Mrs. Ada, did you know your children were left alone all this time?" Ada's eyes widened. "What? No, I sent money. Your daughter is in the hospital after a violent incident. Do you feel responsible?" The camera caught the exact moment Ada's legs gave out. She collapsed right there on the pavement, wailing, her hands clutching at her head. The video went viral within hours. Joy survived, but the baby did not. When she woke up, she refused to speak to Michael. The doctors said it was shock. The nurses whispered it was betrayal. Ada, now a pariah in the community, moved back home, but the damage was done. The neighbors who had once turned a blind eye now pointed fingers, as if their own silence hadn't contributed. And Michael? He wandered through the house like a ghost, just as his mother once had. The weight of his guilt was suffocating. He had failed Joy. He had failed his father's memory. And now the whole country knew it. This story isn't about shaming Ada. It's about a truth so many ignore. Children need more than money. They need presence. How many parents assume their teens are old enough to handle themselves? How many neighbors see struggling kids but say nothing, calling it family business? How many tragedies could be avoided if someone just stepped in? Joy's hospital stay wasn't just the result of one argument. It was the culmination of years of loneliness, of unanswered questions, of a mother's absence and a brother's unchecked anger. And the scariest part? This happens every day. The Harmattan winds blew dry and bitter through Nkwo town the day Mama Ngozi arrived, carrying secrets that would either break the family completely or force them to mend what remained. Joy saw her first, a tall, austere woman in expensive lace, standing at their rusted gate like a ghost from some forgotten past. The woman's eyes, sharp as broken glass, took in the peeling paint, the overgrown weeds, the general air of despair that had settled over the house like a shroud. "You must be Joy," the woman said, her voice carrying the weight of decades. "You look just like your father." Inside, the air was thick with unspoken tension as Mama Ngozi sat stiffly on their best chair, refusing the weak tea Ada offered. Michael lurked in the doorway, the stench of cheap liquor clinging to him even at midday. Joy sat as far from everyone as possible, her arms wrapped protectively around herself. The last year had carved hollows beneath her eyes that no amount of sleep could fill. "I know you don't know me," Mama Ngozi began, "but I was your father's favourite sister. When he married your mother, he begged me to stay in his life. I refused." Her hands, wrinkled but strong, clenched in her lap. "That was my greatest regret." Ada made a small, wounded sound in her throat. "Why come now? After all these years?" The old woman's gaze could have cut steel. "Because Emeka didn't just die, Ada. He was murdered." The words landed like a thunderclap. Michael's bottle slipped from his fingers, shattering on the concrete floor. Joy stopped breathing entirely. Even the neighborhood noise outside seemed to hush in that moment. His land? The fertile plot by the river that his grandfather left him? A certain politician wanted it. When Emeka refused to sell... Mama Ngozi's voice broke for the first time. "They made it look like an accident. But I knew. I've always known." Joy found her voice first, sharp with betrayal. "And you did nothing?" "I was gathering proof." The old woman's composure cracked. "For a year I've been tracking documents, bribing clerks, collecting testimonies. Now I have enough to destroy that man, but the land rightfully belongs to Emeka's children." She looked between Michael and Joy. "If you want it, you'll have to fight for it." Silence stretched like a live wire. Then Michael laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Look at us. You think we can fight some politician? Joy barely leaves her room, Mama can't look us in the eye, and I'm..." He gestured to the shattered glass at his feet, the stink of alcohol radiating from him. Mama Ngozi stood abruptly. "Then your father's killer wins. His legacy dies with you. Is that what you want?" The challenge hung in the air like smoke. For the first time in months, Joy felt something stir in her chest. Not quite hope, not yet, but something dangerously close to purpose. She caught Michael's eye across the room and saw the same spark flickering to life in his hollow gaze. Even Ada sat straighter, her hands no longer trembling. That night, the house that had been silent for so long buzzed with whispered plans. Joy dug through old-school notebooks, her clever mind already spinning strategies. Michael sobered up enough to help Mama Ngozi review legal documents, and Ada finally told her children the truth about her long absences, not just grief, but shame. Shame that she couldn't provide, shame that she'd failed as a mother, shame that had driven her to chase money she never caught. The next morning, they set their plan in motion. Joy used her tech skills to create anonymous social media accounts, leaking documents about the politicians' crimes to journalists and activists. Michael, drawing on old friendships from his university days, tracked down witnesses too afraid to speak. Ada did the hardest thing of all. She went to the market square and stood before the same neighbours who'd scorned her, telling them everything. Not just about the land, but about her failures, her neglect, the broken family she'd created. "Silence kills," she told the gathering crowd, tears streaming down her face. "My silence killed my husband's memory. Your silence almost killed my children. How many more families will we lose before we speak up?" By week's end, the story had gone national. Protesters gathered outside the politician's mansion. The police, sensing which way the wind blew, suddenly discovered new evidence about Emeka's death. On the day of the arrest, the family watched together as the handcuffs clicked shut around the wrists of the man who'd destroyed them twice over, first by taking their father, then by leaving them broken in his absence. That evening, as the first rains of the season began to fall, washing the dust from the streets of Nkwo, the family sat together on their veranda. The silence between them was different now. Not empty, but full of possibilities. Michael reached for Joy's hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Ada watched her children, her heart aching with a hope she'd thought long dead. Redemption, they were learning, wasn't a single moment. It was a daily choice, to show up, to speak out, to fight for each other when the world tried to tear them apart. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, they would walk it together.